today. Everyone's quiet.
Baby let you sleep all the way through at night?
We're getting better.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it does appear to now be 9:15, which means it's time for us to get started. I will do my best to power through as we continue our Genesis study. Today, we're covering Abraham. Last time, we covered the life of Abram. And yet Abram, the exalted father, the honored father, got a new name, which means the father of many nations, or the father of a multitude, I should say. And now with this new name, Abraham carries the promise of a son, Isaac. And he looks forward to the fulfillment of that promise, but, well, Abraham and his wife are both up in years. They're both getting a little old. And so as we come to this portion, we see that there's a lot going on. There's a lot of tensions in Abraham's life. However, we've got just a handful of main stories that we're going to tell today. But there's some of the most consequential stories in this portion of Genesis. We are skipping a good portion of the narrative, just like we've had to do for the last couple classes. Today we're skipping Sarah's laughter at the comments that she is going to bear a child, that she is going to have a child in her old age. We're going to skip the Lord, we're going to skip much of, I should say, the Lord telling Abraham he's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and the debate where Abraham says 40, 30, 20, 15, 10. We're going to skip much of that. We're going to skip the story of Lot's daughters procuring offspring from their father, and I didn't really want to read that story anyways. We're going to skip the story of Abimelech taking Sarah, and again Sarah saying, oh, this is my sister, not my wife. We're going to skip Abraham's covenant that follows with Abimelech, though it will matter in the story of Isaac. We're going to skip more generations, more so-and-so begat, so-and-so begat, so-and-so, and we'll skip the story of the burial of Sarah. As I said, we've got a lot to cover today, so it's kind of necessary, but man, it is a story of compromise when we're trying to get all of this into just all of the Abraham story into 2 sessions. So what are we skipping next time? Feel free to take a picture of this slide if you'd like to study up before we have our class. We're going to skip when Abraham's servant is sent to get his son. The servant basically re-narrates everything that we have already heard happen. He retells the entire story. So we're going to skip a bit of a duplicate story to explain why he's there to get a wife for Abraham's son. We're going to skip the way that Rebekah's family tries to delay. The servant wants to go back home. They say, no, stay a while. Give us 10 more days with our daughter. We're going to skip the story of Abraham taking another wife and having more children. We're going to skip the story of Abraham being buried. We're also going to skip the generations of Ishmael. We're going to skip Isaac and Rebekah, Isaac claiming that Rebekah is his sister, just like Abraham claimed that his wife was his sister. Isaac followed suit, and we're going to skip some well digging as well. So that you're following, that is the plan for next time. Just as before, I'm very concerned that in spite of all that skipping, we will not get through it all. So, Genesis 18. We're going to begin with the story of the oaks of Mamre. This is the part where we're skipping Sarah laughing. But who wants to read Genesis 18, 1 through 5?
And the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre, as he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. He lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing in front of him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent to meet them, and he bowed himself to the earth and said, O Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree, while I bring a morsel of bread, and you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant. So they said, do as you have said.
Thank you. So as we begin this story, Abraham has quite a few promises that he's received from God. He's been promised a name. He's been promised that a nation will come from him. He's been promised blessing and cursing and a son. And so 3 men visit Abraham, but they are no ordinary men, as we will find. And they visit him during the heat of the day, which we well know here in Murray. But Abraham, when he sees them, immediately runs to receive them, which, if we think about the story, is kind of a funny detail. Abraham is really eager to take care of these men. How old is Abraham? Yeah, he's up there. He's up there. Do you think he'll be running to take care of guests at 90? Because I don't, personally. That's a nice aspiration. But he runs out from the door of the tent to meet them, bows himself to the earth, and then asks to take care of them. One of the strange things about this is that he calls one of them Lord. He singles out one of the men. And this isn't clear from the text that you have in English, but he singles out one of the men as Lord. He says, O Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. In Hebrew, this word your is singular. And this word your is singular. So there's a room of people, and Christy, if I've found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. He's singling one person out. The rest of the times that Abraham says the word your, let a little water be brought and wash your feet, he's saying, and to prove that I've been here in Kentucky for a couple of years now, y'all's feet. Let me wash y'all's feet and rest y'all's selves under the tree while I bring a morsel of bread that y'all may refresh yourselves, and after that y'all may pass on, since y'all have come to your servant. How strange. How does Abraham know to single out one man as Lord, and what does it mean that he does? They said, do as you, singular, have said. And Abraham does. Anybody want to read these verses 6 through 8?
And Abraham went quickly into the tent to Sarah and said, Quick, 3 seahs of fine flour, knead it and make cakes. And Abraham ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to a young man who prepared it quickly. Then he took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree while they ate.
All right. A couple of notes here. Again, things you might not pick up in English from the wording that's given. You might think when it says fine flour that we're talking about expensive flour. And that might be what it sounds like in English, but it's saying finely milled, like small, very coarsely ground up and milled flour. However, with that qualification given, let's not make any mistake. This is not a snack that Abraham is preparing. He's not offering a cheap meal or a small one. This is a feast that he's making. 3 seahs of fine flour. Anybody have what that means in their English Bible in the footnotes?
One of them was about 7 quarts.
7 quarts. 21 quarts, right, of fine flour. How much food are you going to make with 21 quarts of flour for 3 people, right? This is a big meal that Abraham is making.
Yeah, because Abraham doesn't eat with them. He just stands there and watches.
Yeah, and he not only gives this crazy amount of flour, but there's a calf that he's going to kill. He's going to offer curds and milk and set it before them. And he stands by, as Christy said, and watches them as they eat. Hospitality was important in the ancient world. But even this, I suspect, is going a little over the top for a random stranger. But the thing is about this moment is it's not a random stranger. And Abraham is not just calling anyone Lord. They spend some time, and we are skipping verses here, the Sarah laughing portion. And we're skipping a really significant detail as we do, that the Lord here is called Yahweh. That this Lord who came to Abraham is actually God himself. And we'll hear him called Yahweh again. But after they eat, the men set out from there, and they looked down toward Sodom. And Abraham went with them to set them on their way. Then the Lord said, because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave, I will go down. I will go down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me. And if not, I will know. So the men turned from there and went toward Sodom, but Abraham still stood before the Lord. There's a lot that's interesting about this. Again, first off, the Lord, all caps. Anytime you see all caps, that's Yahweh. That's the divine name. This is God himself. Second, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great. Who is crying out against Sodom and Gomorrah? Is it God? It's not God, I'll tell you that much. It's their neighbors. It's the other people of the land. And when the ancient Canaanites are calling you evil, you probably have a big problem. These are the people who sacrifice their own children, who worship gods through sacrifice and not good sacrifices. These are people who have all kinds of terrible things going on wrong, people who pillage and rape and murder, and there's lots of warlord type behavior that we saw last time with Kedorlaomer and the other 7 kings or whatever 9 kings were involved in that battle. But the entire neighborhood says Sodom and Gomorrah is especially bad. That their sin is very grave. So bad that God himself has heard it, and he wants to go down and check it out himself. The other 2, we'll find out later, the other 2 men are angels. They'll be called that later in the story. Now before we go any further, I'd like to pause and note something for you. And this is a bit of a spoiler for what's to come. But if you remember the Sodom and Gomorrah story, who's involved?
Abraham and Lot and
Lot's wife and the two angels. But what does God say he's going to do here?
He's going to check it out for himself.
I'm going to go down. I'm going to go down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry. This is not something we get in the Sodom and Gomorrah story, that God himself goes down. If we just read the Sodom and Gomorrah story, we might think that it's only the angels who go. But at least the way it's written here, it sounds like God himself is going to go. And if you think about what happens in the Sodom and Gomorrah story to those men, would anything different have happened to God if he visited in human form? It's a chilling question. The entire story of Sodom and Gomorrah is a bit chilling, if we're honest, right? Uncomfortable. But then we get this, I would argue, beautiful moment. Who wants to read?
Then Abraham drew near and said, "Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you then sweep away the place and not spare for 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to put the righteous to death with the wicked, so that the righteous spares the wicked. Far be that from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just?"
Abraham expresses concern for the righteous. Who's likely involved? Who's likely in Abraham's mind as he says all this? Lot. Yeah, he's worried about Lot. What's going to happen to Lot? Keep going, please.
And the Lord said, "If I find at Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Abraham answered and said, "Behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord, I who am but dust and ashes. Suppose 5 of the 50 righteous are lacking. Will you destroy the whole city for lack of 5? And he said, "I will not destroy it. If I find 45 there, 40, 30, 20, 10. He answered, "For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it." And the Lord went his way.
Yeah. As I said at the beginning of class, we're going to skip over the repetition here, but Abraham talks God down. 50, I won't destroy it for 50. 45, I won't destroy it for 45. 40, 30, 20, 10, and each time God says I won't destroy it, and it's at 10 that Abraham stops. Will 10 save Lot?
Do we know how big the city actually was, or the population?
No.
50 or 100 people in there to begin with.
Well, presumably there's more than 50, right? And presumably 50 is a small fraction of the number of people there.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
50 righteous, and there's a whole place besides. So Abraham pleads with God. How does he plead with God? What does he use to try to convince God not to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah?
Well, he knows God is a just God. And do you really want to destroy the righteous with the wicked?
Yeah. Yeah. I've got to say, we're going to talk about prayer in the sermon today. And one thing that I always really like to remind people, when you think about prayer, is one of the best ways to pray, or maybe I should say one of the best ways to ground your prayers, is to pray to God appealing to his character. We often say to kids when we're teaching them prayer, pray, confess, let's see, I'm mixing adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and supplication. Praise God, confess your sins, thank Him, and ask for what you want to ask for. Why do you start by praising God? Well, it's not quite in that order here for Abraham, but God's request is rooted in God. Abraham's request is rooted in God's character. God, you are so merciful, and you are so good. You've shown mercy to me. Please show mercy to my son. God, you have been so good at caring for my family all these years. Please care for my granddaughter. These kind of prayers, this kind of praise-focused prayer, helps you to ground your prayer in confidence. If you read the Psalms, you'll see this over and over again. That the prayers, the things that the psalmist asks God for, he often praises God for before he asks. But this is what Abraham's doing. You are the judge of all the earth. And implied, you are just. Would it be just to destroy righteous people along with the wicked? The implication is no, and God agrees. Would God have destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah if there were 50 there? No. If Abraham hadn't asked and there were 50 there, would God have destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah? Hard to say. But after this moment, the Lord is no longer present or obvious in the Sodom and Gomorrah story. And the two angels, the other two men, came to Sodom in the evening. They came to Sodom, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. Any idea what that means? Why is Lot sitting in the gate? There's an implied position of authority. Yeah. It seems to be pretty consistent in Scripture that individuals who are sitting in the gate have an authority position of sorts. It's not king, but it's often an arbitrator or a judge or even an elder. Lot might be among other older individuals in the town. But he's sitting in the gate, and he sees these two strangers. We're not told whether Lot recognizes them as angels. There's no indication beyond the fact that he says, "My lords." But Lot goes to them and bows himself to the face of the earth and said, "My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise up early and go on your way." They said, "No, we will spend the night in the town square." And if you know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, that's a terrible choice, right? So he pressed them strongly. They turned aside to him and entered his house. And he made a feast and baked unleavened bread. And they ate. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man surrounded the house. Now before we move on, when you hear the words unleavened bread from the pen of Moses, what do you think? Passover, Exodus, right? Escape from the oppression, the evil of Egypt. What are they about to do? A little mini Exodus from Sodom. So they called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight?" These are the people of the town, to the last man. Every last person in the town surrounds. Bring them out to us that we may know them. What does know mean in Genesis?
Sex.
Yeah, they want to have sex with these two men, whether the men want it or not. And here's where the story gets really horrific. Lot went out to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him, and said, I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. So far, so good. But then he says, behold, I have 2 daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof. Hospitality is very important in the ancient world, but this is horrific. And to be very clear, lest we make any mistake, Genesis does not comment on the propriety of Lot's actions here. It's just narrating the events. I personally find this moment in its entirety horrific. And there's very few good descriptions, at least in my mind.
Do you suppose that all of this was a test for Lot and his family? After all, Abraham said, I can find 10. And the messengers, the angels, the men, whoever they were, as you noted, started out with a really bad idea of staying in the center of town. I mean, you gotta figure, when we only see 4 characters with Lot, his wife was 2 daughters, but obviously the other daughters have families that are referenced later.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to assume Lot had more kids than just those 2.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I mean, that could be the 10 right there.
Right?
Pretty easily.
Right? Right, and there's an implied ongoing test for everybody in town, not just the desire to sleep with these 2 men, but the desire to sleep with the daughters. They had a chance to, at any point, say, oh wait, this is really wicked, we shouldn't do this. But they don't. They keep pressing, and in fact, all the more. So Lot is either himself corrupted by Sodom's sin, or his desire to be hospitable has arguably clouded his judgment. But whatever the case, it's simply put, this is an incredibly messed up moment. And it underscores the immense problem in Sodom itself. The people of the town said, stand back, and they said, this fellow came to sojourn, to live among us as a stranger, and he has become the judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them. And realistically, it seems that Lot has. Sitting in the gate is a judge position. And so now they're mad at him. Not only are they going to deal badly with these 2 neighbors, and note, we will deal worse with you than with them, implies they know they are doing evil. But now they're going to do it to Lot as well. So they pressed hard against the man Lot and drew near to break the door down. But the men reached out their hands, these angels reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. So who are you to judge? One of the oldest complaints ever. And it would have been catastrophe if the angels hadn't saved Lot. They struck with blindness the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, so that they wore themselves out groping for the door. How long were these men groping for the door of Lot's house, blind, that they wore themselves out? Whatever the case, the men said to Lot, have you anyone else here, sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone you have in the city? Bring them out of the place. For we are about to destroy this place because the outcry against its people has become great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. If Lot has sons, daughters, sons-in-law, who are outside this house. What's implied about the behavior of these sons, sons-in-law, or daughters? It's that they were part of the crowd that just wanted to rape these men and the daughters. And what are the angels saying they're going to do? They're offering to save them anyway, for Lot's sake. We're about to destroy this place because the outcry against its people has become great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. So Lot went. He said to his sons-in-law, who were to marry his daughters, "Up, get out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city." But he seemed to his sons-in-law to be jesting. Oh, and by the way, Lot knows who is about to destroy the city. Capitals, that's Yahweh. The sons-in-law do not believe, and as morning dawned, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be swept away in the punishment of the city." But he lingered. We're not told why he lingered, just that he did. And we're not told much in the story, except a handful of details. They wear themselves out. They come at the beginning of the night. They wear themselves out groping for the door. They're just determined to rape these men, and apparently Lot. And then Lot spends the rest of the night urging his sons-in-law to leave with him, and they don't believe him. Morning dawns after all of these events. Lots of time has passed, and the angels say there's no more delay. Let's go. Lot still is trying to delay. Seemingly, Lot is still trying to bring his family. So the men don't take no for an answer. They seize him and his wife and his 2 daughters by the hand, the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. Fun fact, and I don't remember where it was, the word for, the angels urging Lot is the same word that is used for Lot urging the angels earlier in the story. Don't stay in the town square, come to my home. Now the tables have turned. So they say, escape for your life, do not look back or stop anywhere in the valley, escape to the hills, lest you be swept away. Lot said to them, "Oh no, my lords." Doesn't seem like a good idea to me. "But behold, your servant has found favor in your sight." Lot's perceptive. "You have shown me great kindness in saving my life, but I cannot escape to the hills, lest the disaster overtake me and I die. Behold, this city is near enough to flee to, and it is a little one. Let me escape there. Is it not a little one? And my life will be saved." What's being implied here is that this city that Lot wants to escape to is a small city, but it was going to be included in the destruction. If it was not going to be included in the destruction, Lot could have just escaped to it. But because it was going to be included in the destruction, Lot had to ask, can I escape here instead? This little city. And God says, okay. Or the angel does. "Behold, I grant you this favor also, that I will not overthrow the city of which you have spoken." And again, it sounds like the plan was to overthrow it originally. "Escape there quickly, for I can do nothing till you arrive there." Therefore, the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun had risen on the earth when Lot came to Zoar. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. And there's the Sodom and Gomorrah story. So it was, when God destroyed the cities of the valley, God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had lived. There's almost nothing that's exciting about these stories. But it's clear in this moment that the warnings of God for Lot and his family were very real. And they didn't listen. There are plenty of warnings that we should flee things in Scripture. Do you take those warnings seriously? Flee false teaching. Flee sexual immorality. Flee idolatry. Flee from the love of money. Flee from youthful passions. Flee from the wrath that is to come. Do we take them seriously? I don't know. We're skipping ahead. Skipping ahead quite a bit, actually. Skipping all of 20. As we move forward, the Lord visits Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son, who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born to him. So Abraham's 99 when the visit happens, and 100 now. This time next year, Sarah will have a son, right? Finally, God has fulfilled his promise. Isaac gets a special name, which sounds like the Hebrew word for laughter. Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. And the child grew and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. And the story is very happy in this moment after the Sodom and Gomorrah story. Little brief reprieve. Something good has happened. Isaac is here. And yet, we can't help but have problems very shortly afterwards. For Sarah and Hagar still have a bit of an ongoing feud, let's say. Who wants to read the story of Hagar getting cast out?
But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had born to Abraham, laughing. So she said to Abraham, cast out the slave woman with her son, for the son of the slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son.
Yeah. Sarah says everybody's going to laugh. Then everybody does. And she's upset. For Ishmael, Hagar's son, Abraham's son, is laughing too.
One interpretation of the laughing that I've read is it's more of a mockery.
Oh, it might be.
Laughter, which would fit in very well with that.
Very well may be. Keep going, please, Christy.
But God said to Abraham, be not displeased because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you. For through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring.
It's a bit of a slim consolation. Abraham does seem to love Ishmael. He's greatly displeased when Ishmael is sent away. But God says, do what she asks. Do what Sarah has told you. Don't worry, I'm going to make us a nation of your son Ishmael also. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder along with the child. And he sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot, for she said, let me not look on the death of the child. Hagar is despairing. She sees no possible good that could come out of this situation. She's alone in the wilderness with this boy, thirsty, probably hungry. And as she sat opposite him, presumably the boy, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven. He said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation. God's doing what he promised. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, maybe even Abraham's well, one of them. And she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Just pausing, what you know of Abraham so far, would he be happy having his son take a wife from the land of Egypt? No, probably not. But they're outside of Abraham's house now, so they're making the most of it. And then basically we're done with Hagar. Mostly done with Ishmael, at least as far as this story is concerned, as far as our telling of it at least. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham! And he said, here I am. He said, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. And I have said this probably 2 or 3 times now as we've read this story before in Bible study. But man, every translation does this poorly, it seems. Take your son, your only son, the one you love. Isaac is the order of the Hebrew there. Isaac is the last thing that's said. Why? Because as Abraham hears this, take your son. If he knows he's going to be told to offer his son, take your son. I've got 2 sons. Your only son. I have 2 only sons from 2 different women. The one you love. I love Ishmael. Isaac. There's a narrative bit that's going on there. There's tension building there as God tells Abraham who is going to be offered. And it's Isaac, the son of the promise. Take him and offer him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. And man, anybody reading this story has a big question now, right? How is Isaac the child of the promise if he is going to be a burnt offering? How can that possibly be? Is God a monster? You've got to resolve that somehow. There's a big, not just historical mystery, but a narrative mystery. Either God is a liar, or there's something we totally don't understand that's going to happen next. And Abraham, as he has so many other times, hears something crazy from God, and he says, okay, I guess this is what we're doing now. He rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. And I really think that that the order in which things are placed here is not accidental. Took 2 of his men with him. Oh yeah, and his son Isaac. This is meant to be told around a campfire. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering. And he arose and went to the place of which God had told him. Can you imagine cutting the wood for that? Like taking the time, chopping that wood, knowing what it's for? On the 3rd day, 3rd day being significant for us as Christians, right? Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Going up a mountain, going to be a 3rd day kind of thing. There's a son, an only son, being offered up. Then Abraham said to his young men, "Stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you." Now here's another narrative mystery for you. What does he mean that the boy is going to come back? Abraham seems to know something we do not at this point in the story. He seems to have a confidence that most people who read this story do not. If Isaac is the child of the promise, Isaac has to come back. However it works, Abraham seems to have that confidence even now. Either that or he's lying to these men. Those are our 2 options, right? He might very well be. But if you read Hebrews, it says, what? What is Abraham convinced of? Anybody remember? Hebrews says Abraham is convinced that God could bring Isaac back from the dead. In faith he offered Isaac, convinced that God could bring him back from the dead. Abraham, Hebrews is saying, and I would say Genesis is implying too, had total confidence in God throughout this story. And even as he's got this pit in his stomach, as he's holding a knife over his son Isaac, and God still hasn't stopped him, he's got total confidence. So Abraham took the wood and laid it on Isaac his son, and he took in his hand the fire and the knife. They went both of them together, and Isaac said to his father, "My father!" And he said, "Here I am, my son." He said, "Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham said, "God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son." So they went both of them together. And what's going through Abraham's mind at this point, we don't know. But Abraham seems, again, very confident. God will provide. He has so far, right? When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order, and he bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. And just, again, every step of this story had to have been gut-wrenching for Abraham. Even if God is going to raise Isaac from the dead, the idea of killing your own son is horrific, right? And Abraham's building an altar piece by piece. He's binding his son. But at that moment, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." and he said, "Here I am." He said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for I now know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. God himself will provide, he said. So Abraham called the name of that place, "The Lord will provide." As it is said to this day, "On the mount of the Lord it shall be provided." And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, "By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies, and in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice."
Do we have an idea of how old Isaac was at this point? I've heard different accounts, and I'm just wondering for sure.
I don't know, did we get told how old Abraham is?
Not in the text. Implication I've heard is he was around probably in his 30s.
That Isaac was in his 30s. Just like Jesus. Yeah, I mean, doesn't it say that Isaac helped carry some of the stuff up? Yeah. So Isaac had to be old enough to carry a good amount of wood, right? Whatever the case, as I was pointing out as we read through the story, there are a lot of parallels to Good Friday. A lot of parallels to God offering his own son. And God doesn't stop.
And also it would seem that Isaac had to be at least somewhat willing or trusting himself, because certainly a 30-some-odd-year-old man could overpower a 100-and-something-year-old man and not be tied up and put on.
Yeah, I mean, even if Isaac is only 10,
I mean, at the very least he could have run.
it would be hard for a 110-year-old man to fight off a 10-year-old. 15 is even more difficult, right? Like, every year past.
37 is what I'm seeing. Just going off of Sarah's age when he was conceived, and then she dies at 100.
Because she dies,
and
yeah.
The implication that she died
Yeah.
right after this.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
had to be trusting as well.
Yeah. So after this, as was said, Sarah will pass away, and when we pick up our story with Abraham looking for a wife for his son Isaac, we'll have an added element to remember, and that's the grief over the loss of his mother. Yeah. So we are at time. Any other additional thoughts or comments or questions or concerns? As I said, this entire section is a little bit of a rough read as it goes in the story of Genesis. From our discomfort at God's judgment, even if it's justified in the case of Sodom and Gomorrah, to our grave discomfort at God's command to Abraham, even if he doesn't end up killing his son. There's a lot that's difficult. But if we take the New Testament story seriously, a big part of the reason that this story is told at all is to help us better understand Jesus and what he's done for us. To see that God did not withhold his Son, his only Son, the one he loves, Jesus. The one taken off of the altar is us, not Jesus. So, let's close with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, as we come face to face with the sin in our own hearts and the sin in the world around us, so often we waffle between despair and disgust and concern and compassion. Help us as we seek to live out the way that you have set before us. Help us to live it out with love and compassion. Help us to navigate the compromised moral situations that we find ourselves in well. And help us always, when we find ourselves in those situations, to rely upon your grace. We know that so many of our actions in this world are compromises that we have to find our way or navigate our way through because of the fallenness of the world around us. But wherever we fall short, in whatever way or for whatever reason, help us always to come back to your Son, Jesus Christ, in whom we have forgiveness for all of our sins. Help us in Jesus to find and see your love and your faithfulness toward us, your fallen people, that we might know that with that full faith that we see in Abraham, the great care that you have for us and your own faithfulness toward us and all your promises and all the people of this world. Bless us to go out in that confidence today and evermore. Amen.